All right, tell your friends we're about to talk about more important things here on the Steve Gruber Show. If they're sleeping in, wake them up. A lot to talk about here today. Be sure to follow us on Twitter. X, as we're building that neighborhood and that movement every single day here, and we want you to be part of it. Look, watching Donald Trump put together his cabinet and all the other positions in his administration has been remarkable. The cabinet itself was complete in 18 days. But all these other really important appointments are happening. Dr. Oz, Dr. J. Bhattacharya, and all these others that are really good picks, I think. Anne-Marie Buerkle is a former nurse, Congresswoman, Consumer Product Safety Commission chair herself. She joins me now. Anne-Marie, look, it's been pretty remarkable to watch how fast Donald Trump has gone around and filled every position with what seemed to be capable people. The only thing that came up was a concern about the Attorney General pick. That came and went quite quickly. I don't think anybody can argue with Pam Bondi except those that know that she's really good and going to hold them accountable. I mean, look at the speed, efficiency, and the quality of the people. What do you make of it?
Oh, I'm so excited, and I really am just so pleased for the president. I think this election was about disruption and about really the American people saying we no longer want the status quo. We want some transparency, and we want to understand this government, how it works, and we want it to work for us.
Disruptors. That's the word that comes to mind. You're exactly right. Disruptors. And I'm going to use J. Bhattacharya here, been selected to head the National Institutes of Health. I mean, we can't get rid of Fauci fast enough. I mean, quite simply, we cannot get rid of Anthony Fauci fast enough. And these are quality picks. This is a guy, Stanford-educated, brilliant physician, who was silenced, deplatformed, taken down off of social media because he wasn't buying what was going on during COVID. And that's true of a lot of the folks you're seeing here. People that are being put forward that were otherwise deplatformed, canceled. I mean, thank God free speech is alive and well as we head into 2025.
Absolutely. Many of these people came to prominence. Marty McCary, who will head up the FDA, and Jay Bhattacharya, they came to prominence during COVID when the American people, that's when they began to distrust the government. I mean, they sold this quasi health and public health. They shut down schools, they shut down businesses, and with dubious science. And so the American people began to think, this just isn't right. And this election, I think, reflects the distrust that came from COVID and how the American people were treated. And to see these two men who were prominent and not afraid to speak out about what they were seeing during the COVID period is just so, they're going to go look at CDC and FDA and HHS with new eyes, with new ideas. And I think they have the will and the capacity to really make the changes the American
How important is it? And I'm going to ask, I've got Peter McCullough, Dr. Peter McCullough coming up here in just a moment, too. And I'll ask him the same thing. How important are these selections when we will now have a chance to look back? Look, you're a nurse. You understand the healthcare profession. You understand it from a scientific point of view, is my point. How important is it when we look back at what went on in COVID, what was true about mRNA, what was true about the so-called vaccines, what was true about locking children in their bedrooms, what was true about all of these things that we did in the name of science? Was it really done in the name of science or political science? Man, I cannot wait to get the real answers. I think we know what some of them are. Go ahead.
No, I think you're absolutely right. It's what the American people want. They want to understand what happened and where is the transparency from it. And nobody's been held accountable. People lost their businesses. They lost their livelihoods. My daughter was a nurse, lost her job because she did not want to be vaccinated after working 2 years in the COVID, in the hospital with COVID. So someone needs to be held to account for that. That's what the American people are looking for this election cycle. You've got Dr. Oz, who's going to run CMS, which is the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid. He's a doctor and a physician who spoke in favor of Medicare Advantage.
And I want to jump in here, Ann, because I want people to understand. CMS, that is the payment arm. If you go to the hospital and the government's going to cover you for whatever program you're under, that's the payment arm that pays hospitals and doctors and nurses and so forth, right? That's where the money flows through. This is really critically important because if you go back to like the 1990s, the way money flowed from government to hospitals and healthcare providers was pretty straightforward and pretty easy. Now, it's so complicated that hospitals have entire departments trying to reclaim the money they're owed from the government under these different programs. And in fact, we are wasting so many resources just trying to recover the money that is owed because it's so complicated. Wouldn't it be easier if CMS was streamlined so if Bob goes to the hospital and the hospital's owed $100, the hospital doesn't have to spend $50 to get the $100 back a year later? Wouldn't that be better?
Well, and that's what's really going to be the benefit of having these outside eyes in there, people who have been on the front lines of medicine who understand how it works. The budget for HHS is $1.9 trillion. The budget for CMS is $1 trillion. CMS is solely responsible for Medicare and Medicaid, and then all the other programs and everything else is through other agencies within HHS. It is so complicated, and it's what the American people want. They want transparency. How does this all work, and why is it working for us? And that's the beauty of having these appointments. New eyes, new ideas, and outsiders from the usual bureaucrats in Washington.
Yeah, and let me plug one more new institution into all of this. The Department of Government Efficiency, better known as DOGE to everyone now, with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. They're going to come look too. And here's, and Anne-Marie, this is where I think that it's fascinating to me, where AI can plug in, where AI can analyze where a dollar goes and how it flows and what happens to that dollar on its way through the system as it gets grind up in the grist mill of government, right? And I think this is incredibly important for CMS and all these other agencies. But CMS might be one of the most critical because if we can salvage that money, it goes to real people. It helps real people, real American citizens. And I think that is so critical.
Absolutely. And you're right. Having, again, outsiders, highly intelligent and successful men looking at these programs, looking at this government, it's almost an oxymoron to talk about efficiency in government. It just doesn't happen. This is exciting because, again, new eyes, new ideas, and a disruption of the status quo. It's what the American people wanted. It's what they are asked for, and it's what they place their trust in Donald Trump. And he was willing to put his life and everything else on the line for us.
Absolutely.
And I think he has really done a magnificent job, far more organized than he was 4 years ago, or 8 years ago when he took office. And so I think it bodes well for the American people, it really does.
Anne-Marie Buerkle, greatly appreciate you being here. Happy Thanksgiving, my friend. There is an optimism in the air. I've talked about it since the day after the election. The weekend following the election, we were up north, Ivy and I were. And you could just feel that there was this enthusiasm, this exuberance in the air. And I think it's still there, and I think there's a pep in people's step, and I'm really excited about 2025. Anne-Marie, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Steve. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your listeners.
And happy Thanksgiving to you. All right. As I mentioned, Dr. Peter McCullough is going to join me. I'm going to ask him about Dr. Bhattacharya. What he thinks about that, Dr. Bhattacharya. I'm going to get this right yet. Bhattacharya. It's a long name. It's not that easy, folks. I mean, come on, work with me. Anyhow, Dr. Peter McCullough, that I can say, he's up next. You don't want to miss it. It's coming up on the Steve Gruber Show.